Family means to me love and the unity of God.
Family is a gift from God. Family is precious and not to be taken for granted.
Family means people who will be there for you, take care of you, and to journey
Family
with you.
is one of God's greatest gifts to us.
I guess, support, closeness, and serving the Lord together, in His kingdom.
It means forgiveness and support.
It means basically it means honesty. Like when I'm at home, I feel comfortable to tell my family everything.
This is what family is, connected with people on the same level.
It's the ones that we're going to spend eternity with, so we're going to get to know them, and we better start treating them well.
Childhood is a period of massive development. The brain rewires itself several times over during childhood, and the body goes through extraordinary transitions. This has huge effects on the emotions, intelligence, behaviour, and the way children interact with others. The consequences are quite profound. It would seem silly to compare the emotions of a baby in arms with a 5-year-old, or the behaviour of primary and secondary school pupils. To do so would not be to compare like with like. Babies and adolescents are almost like different species. But children's services do not pay as much attention to child development as they might. Let us think about this in two ways: working with the individual child and working to improve the well-being of all children in a school or community. Let us draw a box. We divide the page into 5 columns and mark them: living situation, family and social relations, physical and psychological health, social and antisocial behaviour, education and employment. This is not the only way to categorise dimensions of a child's life, but it will do for the purpose of this illustration. Now the box is divided into 5 rows: pre-birth, preschool, primary school, secondary school, and early adulthood. This is a very crude way of dividing up developmental stages, but again it will help to illustrate the point. Now let's suppose we are working with a child that is behaving badly in secondary school. The teacher sees the child acting out. It's a problem. Now let us look back over the child's development and see what has been happening. We talk to the child and we talk to the parents, and we pick up some facts that might explain what is happening. We focus on health and on physical, emotional, social, intellectual and behavioural development. As before, there are other ways of categorising children's development, but this one will do for now. The child is born into a family with mum, dad and a 2-year-old sister. The child develops well physically, more or less at the same rate as other children of the same age. Nothing unusual either in other areas of development. with nothing unusual to report. But according to Mum, when the child gets to 9 years, she starts to get a little sad and withdraws a little at home and in school. Both Mum and the child relate this to the arrival of a little brother who had colic and was quite demanding in the first months of life. It also turns out that the child was frightened by the prospect of moving from the little to the big school. A little more inquiry reveals that Mum and Dad have not been getting on as well as usual, partly explained by the new arrival and partly by Dad moving to short hours in work. The inquiry could continue, but there is sufficient information to begin to see how a view on development makes us think differently about the child's situation. First, we can see some continuities and discontinuities. The child was doing relatively well until the arrival of her little brother and the deterioration in her parents' relationship. There was order in the development. For example, prior to the problems, the child's reading ability was consistent with her enjoyment in school. Developmental gains in one area, such as social and emotional regulation, produced benefits in others, such as attentiveness. It was only in the first year of secondary school that there was a sudden dip in the child's behaviour. Now let's take a different question. Improving outcomes for children in a whole school or local authority. This time we make 4 columns, crudely representing the different stages of children's development. A line is drawn across the middle of the page. The top row represents all children. The bottom row, those whose health or development is impaired. Now the school or community can identify the activities that are
Why is early child development important? The overarching answer is because it is a determining influence on subsequent life chances and health. But why is that? The principal reason is to be found in the fact that in the early years of life there are a wide range of very key milestones or sensitive periods in brain and biological development. As I'm speaking, this slide is scrolling out, showing some of the early elements of brain development that occur before children reach school age, which is in the dark gray portion of the slide, showing that by the time kids reach school age, a huge amount has taken place in terms of their opportunities to develop basic competencies that will code for success in later years. For instance, their visual systems are connecting to the deep structures in the brain that are associated with emotional control. That means that children who have a consistent set of human faces that they see early on in life, going through a wide range of emotions, develop the neurobiological ability to decode emotion and to develop a sense of belonging. Those children who are neglected or grow up in environments which are violent or emotionally barren, develop a completely different style of coping early on in life and a different set of biological connections which do not work so well adaptively later on. Similarly, in the early years, children's ability to understand language and to express themselves in language goes up as a straight dose response with the richness and the responsiveness of the language environment that they grow up in. So that by the time children reach school age, those that have grown up in rich and responsive language environments are ready to understand the instructions that come from the teacher, ready to respond and describe their experience and learn. Whereas children that have grown up in environments where there's been very little language have huge difficulties decoding sentences of 10, 15, 20 words of length, of understanding what it means to respond to a question, of understanding what it means to give their experience or give their ideas as though they were some sort of expert. Similarly, children early on in life who start off being physically aggressive in situations of social conflict, if by the time they reach school age they've not had the socializing experiences to reduce and eliminate and transform these physically aggressive responses into verbal communication skills, those children are at a high risk of going on to labeling and grade failure as time goes on. So in all dimensions, physical, social, emotional, language, and cognitive development, the early years are crucial for health, well-being, learning, and behavior thereafter. This slide shows that the idea that early life has an influence across the rest of the life course is not just rhetoric. We know from studies following children from the time of birth onward that by the second decade of life, early experiences and early development are influencing school failure, teen pregnancy, and the risk of early criminality. By the third and fourth decade of life, they are influencing the risk of obesity, elevated blood pressure, and mental health problems such as depression. By the fifth and sixth decades of life, they're influencing chronic coronary heart disease, diabetes, and other chronic diseases. And by old age, influencing premature aging and memory loss. So it is true that the early years influence health, well-being, learning, and behavior across the entire life course.
Today, I'm going to talk about one of the reasons why our kids seem to be struggling so much as teenagers in today's world, and hopefully open up some possibilities for you so that you can help guide them through this difficult time in their life while they're struggling and trying to figure out who they are. Quite often as parents, we can very easily get tunnel vision, where all we can do is focus on the negative symptoms of being a teenager, rather than focusing on the source, trying to figure out what's causing my teenager to show up the way that they do in the first place. Here are some of the symptoms that we get fixated on as parents. We don't like their attitude, the talking back, being disrespectful, the dishonesty, thinking that they deserve everything, the entitlement, being withdrawn, being argumentative, and all the other unhealthy behaviors that you notice about your teenager that you don't like. Yet we are reluctant to realize that there could be some core underlying issues going on within our teenagers that we should be becoming more aware of. Let's ask ourselves this question. Could it be possible that our teens have some unresolved emotional issues from their past that could be the reason or one of the reasons for them to be acting out the way that they do? Now, if you've answered yes to this question, then wouldn't it make more sense to focus on addressing the root cause rather than spinning your wheels focusing on the behavior itself? Now, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying here. What I'm not saying by any means is that you should not have consequences for the bad behaviors or let them do as they please. You know, after working with teens for so many years, in the capacity where they feel safe enough to share deeply, I've come to realize and understand a few things that I would love to share with you now. You see, underneath all of those fake smiles and happy faces, buried deep within your children, lies their fears, their self-doubts, and all the other insecurities that they struggle with on a daily basis. Your kids will not let you see this side of them, I promise. Their walls are up, and they hide behind the masks that they have created while constantly pretending that they have everything under control. And they have spent years perfecting this craft. And if you think that all of these insecurities will somehow magically disappear on their own as soon as they hit their 20s, you might have misdiagnosed these symptoms for a bad case of acne. It just doesn't work like that. You can't just ignore it and hope that it's going to run its course and clear up on its own. Now let's talk about some of the unresolved issues that may be in the way of your teenager's full potential. Today I'm going to start off with addressing the self-limiting belief. This is how your kids created those self-limiting beliefs in the first place. Do you remember when your children were born? Do you remember falling in love with them the second that you saw them enter your world? Well, when your children were born into this world, They didn't know much about anything outside of their internal truth about who they really are. They knew intuitively that they were loving beings. They also knew that they were loved by other loving beings. But more importantly, they knew that they loved their self. And the way that they knew this was because of the way that you looked at them. They were seen. They were noticed. They saw you recognize them, and you distinguished them in those moments from everything else unimportant in your life. It was you who assured their greatness and verified their significance in this world as a powerful and magnificent human being. And you didn't need to do anything. You just had to be willing to be present, to see them in all of their highest possibilities, and believe that they are great, without any evidence, without any proof, and without a past to be compared or judged by. And the way that you were able to achieve this was to recognize that they exist. You gave them meaning. You gave them their worth. And when they saw you look at them through your eyes, they knew that they were important. They knew that they mattered. And more importantly, they knew that they were special. As your children grew up, they started to have their own experiences in life. And through those experiences, they started to formulate their own paradigm or belief system for which they could perceive the world and give it meaning. And so they started to create new beliefs about their self. And in a blink of an eye, these newfound beliefs started to replace the internal truth about who they really are, the gifts that they can offer the world, their full potential, and the powerful, loving, and creative person that they once knew themselves to be. I want you to imagine for a moment your child's belief system or paradigm is like a pair of reading glasses that which you gave them when they were younger. And imagine as they grew up, you never adjusted those prescription lenses to meet the demand of their rapidly faltering eyesight. And now imagine them as teenagers who are desperately trying to navigate through their life, expecting to win, expecting to succeed, without even realizing that their vision is distorted. The way that they see the world is skewed. I want you to follow me into a story about little Johnny. When little Johnny was 5 years old, his teacher acknowledged him in front of his mom. And Mom let it be known in that moment how extremely proud of him she was. Little Johnny's heart was full of love, and he couldn't wait to get home and share the good news with his dad. As soon as they got home, little Johnny was so excited that he couldn't even wait for the car to stop before he jumped out and ran into the house. Johnny ran from room to room, shouting out loud for his father, but could not find him. Every room that Johnny ran to, the anticipation got more intense. And the last room that Johnny got to was his father's home office, where he does work and pays bills. The door swings open and little Johnny says, Dad, I have something to tell you." In that moment, Johnny's father is frustrated with whatever he's working on and replies, "Not right now, Johnny, give me a minute." Now in that moment, little Johnny heard his father say several things to him, but not one of them was, "Not right now." What Johnny heard was, "My dad doesn't care about me. I'm not important. I'm not good enough." And on that day, 3 self-limiting beliefs were born into existence for Johnny that may not necessarily be true about the way it really happened. A year later, Johnny's teacher asked him to stand up in class and share. When Johnny was done sharing, he heard some kids burst out into laughter. And as he sat there in silence, Johnny heard his inner voice say, "I'm dumb. Why do I even bother? I'm never going to share again." 3 years later, Johnny's parents divorced and his father moved out of their home. As little Johnny sat up in his room quietly crying his heart out, once again he heard, his inner voice say, "I'm not wanted. I should have been a better son. Maybe my dad doesn't love me." A few weeks before Johnny's 16th birthday, his mother notices that he's stopped opening up and communicating with her the way that he used to. She also realizes that Johnny has no ambition and has stopped caring about the things that used to interest him. Johnny is now starting to talk back to her and be disrespectful, and they're constantly fighting, and his mother is fed up and does not know what to do anymore. Johnny has withdrawn from the people that he cares about the most, and he's starting to use drugs and alcohol to numb out the pain of feeling so insecure. I sincerely hope that in these stories you're able to see value for yourself, to be a more effective parent, to help you be more aware of what your children need from you, even if they don't really know themselves. May you continue to enlighten yourself through self-awareness and by taking responsibility for the results that you co-create in your relationships. Sometimes the answer to our questions are right in front of us. The real question you should be asking yourself is, am I ready to be vulnerable enough to implement the solution?
Caring for a newborn is tough work. This mom pays special attention to our little one during bath time. Did you know the first 5 years of a child's life are important because they lay the foundation on which everything else follows?
The first 5 years of life are important because they literally build the foundation for everything that follows: learning, behavior, actually physical and mental health.
As the founding director of the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard University, Dr. Jack Shonkoff is an expert on brain development.
Years and years of research have actually brought us to a very simple conclusion about what we need for children to develop in a healthy way. Children need stable, warm, nurturing relationships with a relatively small number of adults, and they need a variety of rich learning opportunities to allow them to explore and to kind of figure the world out.
While the science is clear, the challenge is how to help parents.
Some of them are surprised because some parents think that it's okay to put their child in front of the television and let them learn from various television shows, cartoons, and they think that that's cute. However, we say the television is not what the child needs right now. They need that human-to-human interaction, which can be provided in a story.
Dr. Jared Patton, a pediatrician at Lehigh Valley Health Network in Allentown, explains it doesn't matter if the parent can read or not.
One of the things that we look at early on is if a child is handed a book, let's say at 1 year of age, do they take it from you and look at the pictures, or do they put the book in the mouth? If they're putting the book in their mouth, that is a key indicator that they may not have early literacy skills.
Jack Shonkoff presented his research at an economic summit on early childhood investment in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He used numbers to help explain brain development.
The first number is 700 per second. That is the rate at which the brain is making synapses, or connections between cells, during the first 4 or 5 years of life.
That's when basic vision and hearing develop, followed by language and higher cognitive function like hand-eye coordination. Activities like playing an instrument can help develop these skills.
The second number is 18 months. That's the age at which we first start to see differences in developmental test scores based on social class.
The third number is 2 to 1. That's the ratio of the size of a vocabulary of a 3-year-old who's grown up in an economically secure family where both parents graduated college, compared to the child speaking vocabulary who's grown up in a family in serious poverty where neither parent graduated high school.
The reason this is important is because speaking vocabulary, the rate at which children develop words, is a very strong predictor of literacy, and which obviously is a very strong predictor of economic productivity.
The fourth important number to know is 90 to 100%.
What the study found was, large national study, is that children who had more than 6 risk factors for poor outcome, like living in poverty, being a victim of abuse or neglect, parental substance abuse, maternal depression, a single parent household, all of the things that are more associated with poor outcomes. At age 3, children who have more than 6 of these risk factors have virtually 90 to 100% likelihood of already having a developmental delay across the board in their in their cognition, in their language, in their social development.
And the final numbers to understand when it comes to brain development are 3 to 1.
The odds of 3 to 1 are for children who have more than 6 risk factors, the chances of them having heart disease when they're 50 or 60 years old is 3 times greater than children who have no risk factors early in their childhood.
Shonkoff's findings reinforce pediatricians' daily efforts to educate parents, but Dr. Patton says there needs to be more people taking part in the process.
It just can't be a healthcare sector problem. It can't just be a parental problem. It really has to be a combination of everyone to participate and understand that this is a very important thing, because the long-term payoffs will really show off in the future as a child is successful throughout school, goes on for advanced education, and then starts returning to society being a productive citizen.
Legislators care about the communities they represent. They care, and they inherently know if they don't get the kids' part right, that is, if they don't have families who come along 10, 15, 20 years from now who are productive, community-oriented, working together, there really doesn't matter much what they do on anything else.
Early experience literally shapes the development of brain architecture and affects lifelong learning and lifelong health.
Dr. Shonkoff tells us science has a lot to teach us about how children develop. Now it's up to us to put it into practice. If you'd like more information on early childhood development, visit papromiseforchildren.com.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Jackson. The more we learn about the brain, the more we understand how experiences in early life actually shape and change the brain. As parents, we're responsible for much of our child's early brain development. So what can we do to optimize it? Are there things we can do with our kids that will prepare them for a happy, healthy life? Jennifer Kalari says there are. She's a child and family therapist, and she's author of Connected Parenting: Transform Your Challenging Child and Build Loving Bonds for Life. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, what do we know about how a child's brain responds to parents?
Well, what we know is that the brain is very neuroplastic, which means it changes and it adapts to the environment that it finds itself in. We used to think that the brain you kind of grew it till the age of 5 and then you were stuck with it. And what we know now is that every time an experience changes, the brain adapts, and the brain learns, and the brain grows. So every time you connect with your child, or give them new experiences, or they have pleasant things that happen to them, the brain then specializes for positivity. If the brain is exposed to negative experiences chronically, it'll specialize for negativity. And so we have a huge responsibility as parents to shape our children's brains.
Okay, now you talk a lot in your research about oxytocin. What does that have to do with anything?
So oxytocin, we typically think of oxytocin as the hormone you're given to stimulate labor, but it's so much more than that. It's actually known as the tend and befriend hormone, and it has a lot to do with human bonding. And it's also one of the building blocks for social cognition. It's what keeps us bonded together and caring about each other and trusting one another. So you kind of have to think of it as a deal that nature made. The brain isn't finished developing until about 25 years old. So thankfully, we don't have to give birth to a 25-year-old. What nature's done is it's given us oxytocin. And oxytocin keeps us very, very closely bonded to our kids because human babies and human children stay with their parents for a very long time, more than any other animals in the animal kingdom. And we need to stay connected. So that's our bond. Sort of think of it as an endless fourth trimester.
And so what does it do for a child? Please no. And so what does it do for a child, though?
It does incredible things. It actually strengthens the immune system. So when there's high levels of oxytocin in the brain, it makes you healthy. It contributes to mental health and social health. It actually speeds up neuroplasticity, so you learn faster. You learn better. Anything you're exposed to in learning, if there's nice, good levels of oxytocin in the brain, you're going to learn faster. If the brain is stressed and there's high levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, you're going to learn slower because the brain has other things to do. It has to keep you safe. It's a regulator, so it helps you to calm down and relax and become more resilient. So oxytocin is actually a very powerful anti-stress hormone.
Okay, so I guess you want to keep this flowing in your children.
Yes, and in you.
Well, that's true, I guess, in the parent. Okay, so there's a double benefit there.
And it feels good. You know when you look at a baby and you just want to just shock you, and you get that rush, that feeling, you can actually feel The flood of those beautiful reward chemicals like oxytocin, opiates, and endorphins flood you.
Okay.
And it's lovely.
So how do you keep this going in your child?
Well, it's a good question. And a lot of us think, oh, I do that. You know, I snuggle my kids.
It seems like instinct.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
So what I would say is if you're doing it fantastic, do it more. Think of it as brain food. Think of it as emotional nutrition. And we're very stressed as families. We're busy. We're running around all over the place. We're constantly thinking about taking our kids to programs and doing homework and getting them to bed. And we sort of function in task management mode with our kids a lot. We talk at our children, so it's really important to talk to our children. And I don't know this study, but it was done in the States, and I think it's about 7 minutes a week. 7 minutes a week? Yeah, 7 minutes a week that parents actually talk to their children. The rest of the time is talking at.
What do you mean? What's the difference? Give
Well,
me an
the
example.
difference is hang up your coat, sit down, have you done this, where's that, how was school, okay, that's great. And the
Right.
other is, so tell me, like, what did you do in gym today? Oh, you did that, and what was that like, and was that fun? And we think we do that, but we actually need to do it more. It's very, very important for bonding, and it's important for the brain.
Can you give me some more examples? Because you're right. I mean, when I think about how we talk to our kids most of the time, it is a lot of that sort of instructions, you know.
Or teaching moments.
Teaching
We're big on
moments.
those.
Yeah, we like teaching moments, don't we? So how can you turn that around so it's not?
The turning around is really taking a moment and stepping out of mom mode or parent mode and step into your child's shoes, step into their experience. So even when they're upset, let's say they've come home and something's happened at school or they didn't get an invitation to a birthday party or something's happened, even in those moments we think we're listening and we think we're engaged with them, but we're often not validating them. Oh, well, you know what, you could you got invited to someone else's party and that was okay, and this happens sometimes, and why don't we have so-and-so over and then you'll feel better. We move into that task management mode. Let's fix it, let's solve it, or let's cheerlead them out of it, and we're missing the point. What you need to do is sit there and say, oh, they were handing out invitations and you didn't get one, and what was that like for you to see everyone else get one and you didn't? Don't be afraid to kind of sit there right where they are in that moment. And then they get that flow of oxytocin because they know you're really listening. And it also helps them learn not to be afraid of their emotions, but that they happen, and that mom and dad are going to be there to listen through it. And then you can have your teaching moment. Then you can try to fix it and make it better.
So even though it's a negative story, probably, maybe, coming from your child, you can turn it into something positive? Is that it?
Well, you can, because there's a lot of positive things that come from adversity. Reasonable adversity, non-catastrophic events are very healthy for the brain. They're very healthy for the brain. So if the child has experiences, learns they can get through it, that didn't feel very good, but I was okay, and I can use what I learned to apply to a new situation. And mom and dad helped me through it.
Right.
These are very important things. Healthy adversity is a very good thing for the brain.
Well, I would think the tendency might be for parents hearing you to make everything positive.
Yes.
But that's not what you're talking about.
We talked at the beginning about the brain being neuroplastic and growing around experiences. So if you never have any negative experiences, then your brain's not going to grow the software. It's not going to grow the hardware that it needs to actually handle emotional difficulties when they come. So when your ice cream falls on the floor, and when something happens that isn't such a big deal, they fall apart and they don't know how to handle it. And it's because we haven't let them. We haven't given them those opportunities.
But that's hard for parents.
It's so hard. But parents have to see it as important. It's so important because eventually you can't control the things that life throws at your child, and you want them to have the emotional backup to handle it.
What happens if parents do go in and maybe don't quite understand what you're saying and fix everything and make it positive?
You create a child that becomes very dependent on you, first of all, that sees their parent as someone who needs to solve their problems for them. And then as young adults, and what we're seeing in young adults is they're falling apart. They're in poor emotional resilience, higher levels of anxiety, not being able to follow through on things, crying in the workplace. Like, you really see difficulty regulating. And of course, right through calling parents for help, and right through university, asking for help with assignments, call my professor and help me with this. And if you keep doing it, you're going to keep doing it.
Yikes, okay. Is it ever too late to start doing these kinds of things with your kids? I mean, I'm sure there will be parents watching who have, teenagers who think, oh, I maybe didn't quite get this right.
It's a great question, and no, it's never too late. The brain is neuroplastic, which means all the way through, even your adult children, you can use these techniques with them. So it's never too late. You can always start listening. You just have to earn it. You just have to prove to your kids that you're there and you can do it and you can handle what they throw at you.
And how do parents know if they're getting it right? What are they going to see?
You know what? You can feel it. You can see, when I work with younger children and even with teens, you can see when they're very tightly bonded to their parents and the parents listen to them and they can go home and work these things through with their parents. You just see the shoulders back, you see the chin up, you just see them a little more bouncy, a little more resilient. Things happen and they go, oh, well, you know, that sucked. But they're able to move through it and not take it so personally. It's not such an injury to them. It's a thickening of the skin, basically.
All right, and how does this affect their learning?
Well, it does in many ways, first of all. When the brain is filled with these lovely reward chemicals and everything is balanced and the attachment is good, it affects attachment circuitry, which also affects executive functioning. So they learn better, they're calmer, they can pay attention better, they don't have cortisol flying through their body, so they're not emotionally itchy and irritated. So they can focus and concentrate. And when the brain is calm and happy, that's when you learn. That's when you can learn. When you're stressed and upset and worried about your own problems, you can't focus on adapting and learning new situations and learning new things. So,
okay, thank you so much. It's a
you're
lot
welcome.
to take in there. Thanks,
Yes.
Jennifer. My guest has been Jennifer Kalari.
I'm Chris Thompson, and I've got a bit of an unusual story to tell you about how I discovered some amazingly powerful parenting strategies for toddlers and preschoolers. I'll be talking about ways to understand and communicate with your child that you've probably never heard before, giving you the answers to dealing with the terrible twos, poor child behavior, tantrums, and all sorts of other common parenting problems. Some of what I say in this video may offend some of the so-called experts, so I might not leave it up forever. Please watch it while it's still available. I promise it will be one of the most enlightening parenting instructional videos you've ever seen, and I believe you'll be amazed. I have to assume that if you're watching this, you've probably been dealing with a lot of stress or anxiety that stems from being a parent. We love our kids so much, and yet sometimes they can drive us crazy, and their behavior and actions make us worry that we aren't doing a good job of raising them. I've heard from lots of moms and dads who feel like they're failing as parents, and I know you want peace and quiet back in your home, and you're not alone. In fact, you're in very good company. The good news is that you can get the changes that you want. My experience proves you can actually turn things around and really start to enjoy your kids and your time as a parent much more than you are right now. I'd like to help you to make those changes starting right now by showing you some of the most important tools you can learn. Here's more good news. Most of the problems you're facing with your child's behavior are not your fault. Think about it. Kids don't come with instruction manuals. Nobody trains us on how to actually deal with toddlers and preschoolers. They don't teach this stuff in school. And when you're expecting your first child, you may have taken one of those parenting classes. The ones that teach you how to hold a baby, how to feed a baby, and everything baby. Sure, it's important stuff, but it's actually pretty easy when compared to the terrible 2s and 3s and, as one of my friends used to joke, the freaking 4s. These years are big sources of stress for parents. You can either fly by the seat of your pants and fly off the handle, or you can learn and apply some much better ways of dealing with your kids. Because you're watching this video, you fall into the second category, and you should really congratulate yourself for that. There's only one real reason you don't have the peaceful home that you want with well-behaved children. Nobody's ever given you the right information and the proper tools. You've either been given no information, or even worse, the wrong information. You've continued to apply the correct solution, which didn't work despite it being the correct solution. So let's fix that. Here are the top 4 lessons that every parent needs to take to heart and apply. Number 1. Behavior is driven by emotion, not logic. This is fundamental to everything. Behavior for any person of any age is determined by their emotional state. People act from their emotions and then they later justify their actions with logic. But small kids don't have the ability to use logic, so they act purely from emotion. Say your child won't get dressed in the morning, won't eat his dinner, or won't share a toy on a play date. Your child mentally connects the behavior that you want to some kind of emotional pain. So no matter how many times you ask, your child won't cooperate. Changing your child's emotional state is the key to getting the behaviors that you do want. So how do you change a child's emotional state? I discovered some very specific language patterns to make it easy for your child to feel good about the behaviors that you do want. Once they feel good about it, the behavior change follows instantly. I see so many parents trying to use logic instead. If you eat that cookie, you won't be hungry for dinner. Or, if you don't wear this coat, you'll be cold outside. Or, you need to have a nap, or you're going to be cranky this afternoon. It simply doesn't work. I bet you can validate this by thinking back to your own experiences with your child. Number 2, we tend to overuse the word no when we talk to our kids. You remember the story of the boy who cried wolf, right? The little shepherd boy was bored while watching the sheep, so he decided to cry wolf to make the villagers come running. Before long, they stopped responding to his false cries. When a parent cries no at every little thing, kids stop listening. People, including kids, are programmed to notice differences. If you're driving down the road, you don't tend to notice the normal behavior of other cars or people walking on the sidewalk. But if a car suddenly comes to a stop, or if a child suddenly runs into the street, you do take notice because something is different. Ask yourself if you say no so often that it has faded into the background and become as ordinary as cars on the road or people on the sidewalk. The better alternative is to change your child's behavior without even having to resort to saying no most of the time. I'll show you exactly how you can do this using language techniques that seem almost magical and almost too easy. Number 3, if you want to have any chance at all of influencing your child's behavior, you must have rapport first. Rapport simply means having an emotional connection to another person. This is why strangers will talk about the weather or gasoline prices. They're unconsciously making general comments that they know the other person will agree with. Agreement creates rapport. It's a natural process we all do in adult relationships. It's as natural as breathing, but we often forget that we need to build rapport with our kids too. If little Samantha is playing in the sandbox at the park and you suddenly announce to her that it's time to go home, you have a huge chance of creating a fight because you missed the first step of building rapport. I'll show you how you can learn lots of ways to create this crucial emotional bridge before you change a child's behavior. Number 4, language is a powerful tool, and there are a bunch of tactics you need to learn to create the outcomes you want. Here's a specific tip. Use positive language instead of negative language. Ask your child to sit down instead of stop jumping on the couch. Ask him to hold his cup with 2 hands instead of don't spill your milk. This is the opposite of how most of us speak, but science has proven that speaking in negative terms and saying what you don't want will actually cause your child to do exactly what you're trying to avoid. You want some simple proof that will work on you right now? Okay, do not think about the color of your child's hair right now. Don't think about it, and certainly don't form a mental image of it right now. See? As soon as you're told not to do something, you at least have to think about it to understand what it is that you aren't supposed to do. The difference is that young kids, unlike adults, don't have something called a critical faculty, which helps to process the negatives in language. I've got so much more information to share. Can you imagine what would happen if you installed a powerful set of communication strategies within your mind? It's not as hard as you might think, and the effects are fast and powerful. How much more peaceful will your life be once you know how to fix or even prevent most of those behavioral problems that you've been dealing with? Would you like to start enjoying more laughter and smiles with your kids? Want to really feel like you understand your kids and know that you're doing the best job you can? I want you to experience the joy of a loving, nurturing, and emotionally healthy family life. It's entirely possible for you. I know it because I've helped thousands of other parents learn how to deal with their kids more effectively. In fact, while preparing this video, I was shocked to discover that I've sent my parenting course to parents in 58 different countries, and I'm not done helping people. There are still far too many parents who share your frustrations and need these solutions. I think I should share my own story with you so that you can understand why I feel so passionate about these parenting strategies. As I said in the beginning, my name is Chris Thompson. I'm a proud father of 2 girls named Anne and Elizabeth. I'm married to my sweetheart Vanessa, and we live in Toronto, Canada. My story actually goes back to when I was 19 years old, entering my first year of university to study engineering, not psychology or sociology. I was a math and science geek. The university brought in a guest speaker who, unbeknownst to me at the time, would change my life forever. The speaker showed us how to use our brains to make powerful shifts in our emotional states, like how to take a lousy mood and turn it around instantly. He also taught us some of the basics of influence, persuasion, and relationship building. This stuff really excited me, and when the presentation ended, I went up to the speaker and asked him how to learn more. He handed me a reading list of recommended books to study, and I've always maintained my passion for learning about influence, persuasion, relationships, and rapport. I got really good at this stuff. I built the right kind of relationships with people in university, and I applied my skills to get a great job upon graduation while others had a hard time. I was still only 22 at this point, and I was too busy focusing my skills on my career to realize that there was a lot more to it. Let's fast forward over the next 8 years. I got married, I applied my skills to make a highly rewarding and unconventional career shift. Then when I was 30 years old, we had our first baby. Anne changed my life forever. Just talking about this is making all the memories flood back of me holding her for the first time. And that first moment, holding this tiny baby of mine, it hit me that I had a much bigger responsibility than ever before. By the time she was entering the terrible 2s, my wife was pregnant again with our second daughter, Elizabeth. We didn't need any more stress, believe me. Here's where my training starts to come in, and thanks for bearing with me so far. The challenges and problems that we faced with Anne were very typical. She would say no to us a lot. She would point at things that she wanted and cry if we didn't give them to her. She'd have fits or throw tantrums if we didn't live up to her expectations. I bet you can relate, right? That's when I finally clued into the idea that all of my expertise in building relationships and influencing people would probably work on small children too. The tools just needed to be reworked to fit parenting situations rather than business situations. I started making notes on every new idea that hit me. I'd test them out on Annie the Terrible, and they'd work like magic. Then came the one moment that clinched it all for me. I realized how powerful this stuff was and how nobody else was doing or teaching these ideas. I was in the grocery store with my pregnant wife and daughter. There we were in the checkout line waiting to pay for our groceries. Anne was in the shopping cart with her eyes at the perfect height to see the candy. I mean, seriously, they must set up the checkout aisles like this on purpose. Kid sees candy, kid asks, then begs for candy, parent says no, kid freaks out, secret camera captures it all, and you end up on YouTube. Well, as you can guess, Anne really wanted this chocolate candy called Smarties. The packaging is brilliant. You simply can't miss them. She smiled. Oh yes, it always starts that way. Then she pointed at them and said in her cave child voice, "Want this?" My wife started to say no to her, and I could literally see the meltdown beginning to take shape. Her lips started to quiver. That's usually the clear sign. Thank goodness I was quick on my feet that day instead of staring down at my BlackBerry. I quickly tested out a new technique that I'd been perfecting. It's called the distraction method. Yes, I know, very fancy title. It's an elegant technique that starts with something we already talked about, building rapport. If you forget this step, you're in trouble, seriously. But nobody's teaching this. Anyway, I built rapport and used a special distraction technique to completely avert the meltdown and the walk of shame over to the parking lot. What a relief that was. I took the time to take my communication skills and adapt them for use with children. What I developed is a unique, effective toolbox for parents. Nobody is teaching this stuff. Terrible twos? How about terrific toddlers instead? I've always been a natural teacher, so after experimenting on my own kids, I started working with other parents. The results were truly spectacular. Parents no longer felt like they were out of control. Kids started to behave better. The results were fast, and best of all, the strategies I teach maintain a child's dignity and actually help the child understand how to make better choices. I turned all of this into a course called Talking to Toddlers. The techniques that you'll learn will work on any age group. I always chuckle when wives email me to share stories about using a technique on their husband. But the examples are really geared towards the 2 to 6 year old age range, so not just toddlers. My course is unique because it's the only program that breaks down the science of communication and applies it to kids with a parent-approved emphasis on creating positive influence in children. Here are just some of the techniques you'll learn. Get your kids to say yes instead of no. If you find yourself successfully using the same strategy on your spouse, coworker, or boss, you have my permission to blame me. Quickly kill that bad mood. I'll show you how to use natural emotional cues to install a magic button that you can push to change your child's mood. Get children to stop changing their minds so much. I'll teach you exactly how to stop this, but in a positive way. It eliminates your stress and frustration while building your child's confidence at the same time. It's win-win. The best way to use consequences. I'll explain to you exactly what steps you're probably missing when threatening consequences. This will dramatically boost your success in using consequences. How to sidestep a temper tantrum. I'll teach you multiple tools that will save you unbelievable amounts of frustration. I love getting emails from parents who experience the difference these make. Plant positive ideas in your child's mind. You will learn to plant suggestions for specific behavior, like going to bed, eating dinner, or feeling comfortable on the potty. But the real power here is how you can instill confidence, strength, love, and other feelings. You need to know this. Now, I've got an important question for you. Remember what it was like to take your infant child out of the house? So long as you had your ultimate toolkit, the diaper bag, you felt comfortable, right? It had all the supplies you needed to deal with unexpected problems. Leaky diaper, anyone? We've all been there. But now, you need a different sort of diaper bag. The tools you need have changed. Talking to Toddlers is your toddler toolbox. It's your security blanket for the terrible twos and beyond. It's what gives you the confidence you can handle all those behavior problems nobody ever showed you how to deal with. Speaking of diapers and clothes, I'm sure you've thought about the investment required to raise a young child. Hundreds of dollars every month on all of those baby and toddler items. And then there's all the spending on activities and childcare. So how much are you investing, if anything, on tools to help you enjoy your time with your kids and reduce potential marital stress? You deserve to spend a little something on yourself once in a while, don't you? Grab a copy of my course, Talking to Toddlers. Click the button below and let's get started. I've created 2 options for you. Option 1 is the complete Talking to Toddlers manual. This is a digital book you'll download instantly. It also comes with a special cheat sheet I created to give you an at-your-fingertips summary of all of the language techniques. You'll also join my customers-only email list where you'll get special bonus tips and lessons because I care about supporting my customers. The complete manual is priced at $37. Option 2 is the premium audio package. You get everything that I described in option 1, plus you get the entire course delivered as professionally recorded audio files. These instant downloaded audios will play on your computer or iPod, and of course you can use them to make your own CDs if you're the least bit tech savvy. Otherwise, if you need CDs shipped to you, just look a little lower down on this page and you'll find a spot where you can order them. The audios really improve your learning because I can demonstrate the techniques to you. It's the next best thing to a live teaching session. The audio package is $67, but I've decided that for a limited time, I'm not going to charge you $67. Instead, I'll upgrade you to the audio package for free when you order the $37 package. So as long as this video is up, which won't be forever, you get the free upgrade to the audio version and you get the best possible learning at the lowest possible price. Remember, you'll download everything as soon as you finish submitting the order form. You can start doing this right now. The other thing you need to know is that I insist on offering you a 100% money-back guarantee. You can try my course for yourself for 60 days, and if for any reason you aren't totally thrilled with the results, you'll get every penny back. You'll have access to my direct email address, so there's zero risk and there's nothing to physically return. Consider it for a moment as you make your decision to invest in Talking to Toddlers. You can either take action now with no risk, or you can continue doing what you've been doing, and through no fault of your own, I'm guessing it's not giving you the results you wanted. I'd love for you to be my next success story, but you've got to be the one to push the button and make the decision. I'll be waiting for you in the customer's area. You deserve it.